The air is cold and wet, thick with the smell of mud and burnt powder. Somewhere in the distance, artillery rumbles like slow thunder that never quite stops. In a narrow trench cut into the earth of the Western Front, a German infantryman leans against the cold clay wall, his breath visible in the gray morning light. In his hands is a long rifle, its wooden stock worn smooth by months of use. This is the Gewehr 98, a weapon built for a very different kind of war than the one he now finds himself fighting. It was designed in an age of open fields, long sight lines, and disciplined volley fire. How did a rifle made for that world perform in the cramped, chaotic reality of trench warfare? That question sits at the heart of this story. To understand the Gewehr 98, we have to go back to the final decades of the 19th century, a period when European armies were racing to modernize their infantry weapons. For centuries, soldiers had relied on black powder firearms, which produced thick clouds of smoke, fouled easily, and limited how quickly a soldier could reload. The introduction of smokeless powder changed everything. It burned cleaner, allowed for higher pressures, and made rifles more accurate at longer distances. At the same time, engineers were perfecting repeating bolt-action rifles, which let a soldier fire several rounds before needing to reload by hand. Range, accuracy, and rate of fire all improved dramatically in a short span of years. Every major power in Europe understood that whoever fielded the best combination of these technologies would hold a real advantage on the battlefield. For the German Empire, still a relatively young nation shaping its military identity, adopting a truly modern service rifle was not just a technical decision. It was a statement of national strength. The man most associated with solving this problem for Germany was Paul Mauser, a designer who had spent decades refining bolt-action rifle systems. Through the 1880s and 1890s, Mauser and his engineering team developed a series of rifles, each one improving on the last. These earlier designs introduced features like stronger bolt-locking systems and more reliable magazines, and each version taught the Mauser work something new about strength, safety, and manufacturing. By the mid-1890s, these lessons came together in a new rifle that impressed German military testing commissions. In 1898, the German Army formally adopted this design as the Gewehr 98. It replaced an earlier service rifle that had shown weaknesses in both strength and reliability. The adoption of the Gewehr 98 marked an important step in Germany's military modernization, giving its infantry a rifle built on a stronger, more refined action than almost anything else in Europe at the time. At its core, the Gewehr 98 is a bolt-action rifle, meaning the soldier manually operates a handle to eject a spent cartridge, load a new one, and lock the chamber closed before firing again. It held 5 rounds in an internal magazine, which could be loaded quickly using a stripper clip that guided all 5 cartridges into place in a single motion. The rifle used what is known as a controlled feed system, where each cartridge is gripped firmly by the bolt from the moment it leaves the magazine until it is fired, reducing the risk of a jam. Strength was central to the design. 2 sturdy locking lugs at the front of the bolt held it securely closed under the pressure of firing, and a 3rd safety lug provided a backup in case the primary lugs ever failed. The rifle also included vents designed to direct gas safely away from the shooter's face if a cartridge ever ruptured, an important safety feature for the period. It had a long barrel and a full-length wooden stock, a design suited to the era's emphasis on long-range accuracy and disciplined marksmanship. A rotating safety lever let the soldier secure the rifle without unloading it, and a bayonet lug beneath the muzzle allowed a blade to be fixed for close combat. For aiming at distant targets, the rifle used an adjustable rear sight known as the langue visier, a tall, folding sight calibrated for long-range volley fire. Together, these features earned the Gewehr 98 action a strong reputation among military and civilian shooters alike, valued for its strength, dependable feeding, and overall safety. The Gewehr 98 was chambered for the 7.92 by 57 millimeter Mauser cartridge, a round that would go on to serve German forces for decades. When the rifle first entered service, it used an earlier cartridge loaded with a round-nosed bullet. In the early 1900s, German ordnance engineers developed an improved cartridge known as the S-Patron, which used a lighter, pointed bullet instead of the older rounded shape. This pointed design, often called a Spitzer bullet, reduced air resistance in flight. The result was a noticeably higher muzzle velocity and a flatter trajectory, which made it easier for soldiers to judge distance and hit targets without constantly adjusting their sights. It's worth being clear about what this actually meant on the battlefield. The rifle's sights were calibrated for use at long range, and the cartridge was genuinely capable of traveling well over a kilometer. But a weapon's theoretical maximum range says little about how it performed in real combat. Most infantry engagements happened at far shorter distances where visibility, terrain, and the chaos of battle mattered far more than a rifle's outer limits on a testing range. When war broke out in 1914, the Gewehr 98 was the standard rifle of the German infantry, and it remained so throughout the conflict. In the war's opening months, when fighting still involved movement across open ground, the rifle's long-range accuracy suited the tactics of the time. As the front lines froze into static trench warfare, the nature of combat changed dramatically. Soldiers now fought at much shorter distances, often exchanging fire across mere meters of no man's land, or clearing narrow trench lines in brutal close quarters, fighting where a bayonet fixed to the rifle's muzzle could be as important as the rifle itself. Some Gewehr 98 rifles were fitted with telescopic sights and issued to selected marksmen for observation and long-range shooting, a role that contributed to the wartime use of the term sniper. Soldiers also adapted rifle grenades to the platform, extending its usefulness beyond direct rifle fire. Through it all, the rifle proved accurate and hit hard, but its considerable length, well over a meter, could make it cumbersome to maneuver in a cramped trench or during sudden close combat, conditions its designers had not fully anticipated when they built it for an earlier vision of warfare. Looking back, it's possible to weigh the Gewehr 98 fairly without exaggeration in either direction. Its strengths were considerable, the action was exceptionally strong and reliable, capable of handling powerful ammunition safely for years of hard use. It delivered genuinely good accuracy, and its cartridge hit with serious power at both short and long range. Its military construction was rugged, built to survive the mud, cold, and rough handling of the front. At the same time, the rifle had real drawbacks in the context of trench warfare. Its length made it awkward to handle in confined spaces. Compared with some rival designs, its practical rate of fire in trained hands was a touch slower. The langue visier sight, while precise, was more complicated to use quickly than simpler sight systems, and its minimum range setting was not always ideal for the close, fast engagements common in the trenches. None of this means the rifle was poorly made. It means the Gewehr 98 was a mechanically excellent weapon, shaped for one style of warfare that then had to prove itself in another. It's natural to wonder how the Gewehr 98 stacked up against the rifles carried by other nations in the same war. The British short magazine Lee Enfield used a 10-round magazine, roughly double the Gewehr 98's capacity, and its smoother bolt action allowed well-trained soldiers to fire at a notably fast pace. The French Liebel model, 1886, though older in design, used a tube magazine beneath the barrel that was slower and more awkward to reload than a box magazine fed by stripper clips. The Russian Mosin Nagant, like the Gewehr 98, held 5 rounds and shared a similar overall philosophy, though it was known for a rougher, heavier bolt action. The American M1903 Springfield, meanwhile, actually borrowed several design principles directly from the Mauser system and shared many of its strengths in accuracy and reliability. None of these rifles was simply better or worse across the board. Each was shaped by its own nation's tactical doctrine, its manufacturing capabilities, and the kind of war its designers expected to fight. Comparing them fairly means recognizing those different starting points rather than searching for a single winner. The influence of the Gewehr 98 extended far beyond its own service life. After the war, Germany produced shorter versions of the design, including the Karabiner 98A and the Karabiner 98B, adapted for changing military needs and the restrictions placed on German forces after 1918. In the 1930s, this lineage led to the Karabiner 98 EHK, which became the standard rifle of German forces in the Second World War. But the reach of the Model 98 action went well beyond Germany itself. Its combination of strength, safety, and reliable feeding made it one of the most studied and admired bolt-action designs in firearms history, and gun makers in many countries drew on its engineering principles for their own military and civilian rifles. That doesn't mean every bolt-action rifle that followed was a direct copy. Rather, the Gewehr 98 set a benchmark of mechanical soundness that engineers elsewhere respected and often built upon in their own way. Picture that same soldier again, still standing in his trench as dawn breaks fully over the shattered landscape. The rifle in his hands was never built with this scene in mind. It was designed for a war of long lines of sight, disciplined volleys, and open maneuver. Instead, it found itself in a war of mud, artillery, machine guns, and trenches dug deep into the earth. The Gewehr 98 was not simply a rifle carried through the First World War. It was a design created for one vision of warfare, tested by a completely different reality and influential long after the trenches had fallen silent.